exciting day today. We have the Peax Solitude 4 tent, ground tarp, and the Peax Torrid Stove. So what we got to do is we got to set this thing up, and this is going to be no BS video. I don't know what I'm doing, so we'll see how this goes. Got the footprint set up for the most part right now, just laid out on the ground. This is the actual tent itself. One thing I noticed off the bat, that you don't get separate stakes for the footprint. So you use the same stakes for the footprint and for the TP tent itself. But I think once you get the footprint set up and tightened down, it's pretty easy to set up the TP itself. Like I said, I've never set this up before. I've just watched videos on it, so we'll see how this goes. And one nice thing is on each of the corners, there's little guy outs. So you can, once you get your basic footprint done, you can go back through and you can kind of tighten the guy outs down. And then that will really tighten your whole perimeter for your TP tent. If you don't totally know what you're doing like me, I just had to flip this, the TP portion around a bunch of times. So I was trying to figure out what direction it needed to be. Once you figure that out, it seems like it's pretty easy. So I think what's going on here is if you look at the tent stake right now, it has numbers on here, and it's numbered with this green number right here. There's 4 tabs on the tent and then on the floor itself, and I think those 4 tabs all go to the corners because they all have green on them. I think all the greens go together. All right, so I have the main base of the TP setup. I have all the corners guyed. Now I'm going to go back through and I'm going to guy all the little spots off of the TP portion itself. All right, let's just do a quick little walk around overview. There's definitely a few things that I figured out after setting this up for the first time. It's not as easy as they make it look, as other people make it look in the videos, you know, since they've probably done it a bunch of times before. Probably the number one thing that I noticed is that right now, if you look at my guy outs, they're not really doing anything. And that's because my stake's not far enough away, for one, but then also for two, if you look at these are the green tabs that I was talking about, and they correspond to the liner as well, or to the bottom. And so when you do this bottom part and you put the bottom in, I would say get your stake more straight up and down to the bottom, or more, or closer to that bottom piece, because after I did the bottom portion and then I staked the rest of this tent, the bottom floor didn't really want to go in there that well, or the tabs didn't want to stake down very well. Like you can see this right here, this is kind of like sunken in, and that's kind of just because of the way that I have this staked, and because of how the floor goes in here. But I think after you do it a couple times, obviously it's going to get a lot easier. And so if I open this up and you look at this tub style floor, so here's the floor right now, and this does not look nearly as good as like how they do it when you see it in videos where people have done it before. And I think the problem is when I staked this out, I put these stakes too far away. You want to put them a little closer. You want to still have a little gap so you have enough to, you know, use your guy outline and tie it down. But the biggest problem I notice is that if you try to guy out the tent too far, then these little tabs don't really, like, they get too tight in some spots, so your floor's just floating. This side looks a little better, but the other side doesn't look nearly as good. But it looks okay. It looks okay overall. This side could definitely use some help, especially right here. I don't really know. I think it's because that side of the tent is, I have it too far out. This part of the tent needs to come back in closer to this floor itself. If you want, I think one thing is, if you want the tent's like overall circumference or the width of it to be as big as possible, then, you know, you're not going to be able to really use the tubbed part of the floor. But you can still use the floor. You just need to unclip these so that there's not tension on here anymore. And then you can still use the floor and then tighten it. But I would say that it doesn't work the best if you try to spread this tent out as far as possible. I did start with the tent on 80 when I put I started the tent on 80 when I put it in there, and then I moved it up to 86, and then to help the sides of the tent come back down closer to the ground, I moved it down to 84 now. Otherwise the sides were way too high. As easy as, you know, it is that they show in the other videos, but I'm sure after I do it a couple times, it'll definitely get a lot easier. All right, so after this, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll set up the stove in here, and I will also put some trekking poles in here so we can kind of see how it looks, and maybe I'll go around the outside and try to fix it up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and set up the hot stove. I'm gonna wear gloves for this because it is titanium. If you don't wear gloves, then you're gonna leave every single fingerprint or oil from your hand on there. And that's fine, you can do that, but I just don't want that stuff all over the stove, so it will burn in like that. So everything for the stovepipe and the base of the stove is wrapped up inside where the stovepipe is. I do know that you want to have this thing clipped in here, so D10. You want to have that in there for sure. And then there's little spots in here where the salt goes. So I get one feet. Hear that? Is it set to hold okay? I will set. Start. And just mess the top up when I put it on. There's a little spot. Almost like a little clip on the top part of the you have to get it inside. We definitely do the top first. Yeah, definitely do the top first. Finish off. And there's the mid part of the stove right there. All right, this next part is going to be the stove pipe. And the stovepipe keeps kind of wanting to unroll on itself, so I'm gonna roll this out, and then I'm gonna use the I'm just gonna use this stove and just set it on there. So now that I got the tent completely set up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to burn in the hot stove. I'm going to get a little bit of this fire wax stuff right here. Just got this off Amazon. It's a lot cheaper than the big brand name stuff, I guess. And then just gonna put it on some of these twigs here, and hopefully this little baby starts right up. That's really the key here, is we gotta get the chimney to start sucking up out there outside so it starts drafting us. Tactico Survival Fire Wax Tinder. Seems like it works pretty good. It's still on fire in there. Hopefully this isn't a total failure and I just look like a complete asshole. Let's see if I close this and maybe it will start. Oh yeah, there we go. Now we got a little bit of smoke coming out of there. All right, final thoughts here on the Peax Solitude 4 TP tent. I have it set up overnight. I burned in the stove, adjusted the lower guy lines just a little bit. The tent overall looks pretty good. It's not as easy or as user-friendly to set up, you know, as some of the videos that I watched online. But overall it is pretty easy to do. You can tell there's a few places where, you know, it's not as tight as it could be. I messed around with the stakes and the guying and different ways to guy it and how close the stakes should be on the corners and how close the actual TP portion needs to be to the bathtub style floor inside of it. And overall my impressions of it are really positive. Seems like it's going to be a pretty awesome TP tent for us this year, elk hunting in the backcountry of Idaho. We're going in on motorcycles, so this is going to be a nice lightweight solution for us to use back there.